Welcome to the Get Published podcast, sponsored by Brodie Consulting Group. To get more information about our publishing and coaching services, go to getpublishedpodcast.com. Hello, I am Paul Brodie, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Get Published podcast, where we help authors get published with a proven system that works. Today, we're being joined by Michael Sherlock, author of Tell Me More. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Paul.
You ready to get started?
I am, absolutely.
All right, let's get to it. Question number one. What is the one piece of advice that you would give to a first-time author who is currently writing their book?
First of all, just go with it when you're ready with it, and don't try to over-edit yourself. I think the biggest challenge I faced with my first book is I wrote the book in a very short period of time, and I took about 3 times as long to edit it, and that was too much. I didn't need to be perfect when I had other people that were going to have eyes on the book.
I think that's great advice. It's one of those things you want to get the draft out there, but sometimes the proofreading process, it can be quite intense depending on how things go and how many people you have actually helping you with the editing part of the book.
And we can, because it's easy to feel like it's your baby and you want it to be perfect, but part of that is also understanding that none of us are perfect, and part of the process is learning how to trust others and embrace it where it is.
Yeah, one of the phrases we use in the show often is done is better than perfect. I think out of the 60 some odd episodes that we've done, that's probably been mentioned at least 40 of them, it seems like.
I agree.
What do you feel is the hardest part about getting published?
A couple different things. Number one is trying to decide, are you going to spend time and energy looking for a traditional publisher, or are you going to go a self-publishing route? And I have spent time trying to do both, and I have done both, and I finally made the decision, even with the second edition of my first book and my second book, to self-publish again, even after I had a contract from a traditional publishing house. And the reason being is that I started to look at things very strategically. I asked questions, and I had a very trusted resource that helped me to look at that contract from a traditional publishing house and compare it to what I could have both financially and control over my product with a self-publishing house that I felt much more comfortable with my second time around. So it's about making the right decision, but just as much as you can spend way too much time editing your own book, you can spend years trying to gain the attention of a major publishing house. And that may be what you want to do, which is wonderful, but there's other options, and I think it's important that people are open to them, but they really look at them to make the decision that's best for them and the trajectory of that book.
Absolutely. That's the same thing I say to my publishing clients as well, and that is that you want to have the control over your book, especially if you're leveraging the book to help to grow your business, and you want to have the control in that. You want to be able to have the rights to offer different type of back-end offers, whether it's a course or coaching or strategy sessions. And sometimes with traditional publishers, it's more difficult to do that. But when you're actually doing it yourself or working with a publisher, that you're able to keep those rights. It really does make a big difference to have that creative control and the ability to make changes whenever you want. Because you mentioned you're doing a second edition of your book, and when you're doing that yourself, it's definitely a much easier process compared with having to deal with a traditional publisher.
Absolutely, without a doubt.
So that's a great point. And what I'd like to do is transition over to the marketing part. So please share a marketing strategy that you have used in your book launch that worked well.
Well, this is a great time, Paul, to ask that question, because I'm just about 4 weeks away from the relaunch of, the launch of my second edition of Tell Me More, and that's a leadership book. One of the things that I realized and learned from the first publication of that is that I needed to get it into the hands of people who are not only going to read it and use it as a leadership strategy book themselves, but for people that could also hire me as a speaker. That's a very important part of my overall business strategy. So I have spent time the last several months networking with people that I know, that I've worked with, or that I've reached out to just on my own to try and get my group, my core group of followers, to have some commitment to the book before it comes out. And let me give you an example. when the book is released on the 24th of September, I'm going to have right around that day, right before the official launch, that's the target, I'm going to have an open time of about 24 hours where people are allowed to buy my book for a discounted price, a substantial discounted price, if they are buying 10 or more copies. And so my strategy is a couple-fold. It's to not only sell a lot of books, which is important, get them in the hands of the people that are, potential clients, consultants to speak with, but also to make sure that I can sell a large number of books in a very short period of time and try and hit some of those bestseller opportunities even within the Amazon world. So the goal is to make sure there's a big enough splash by the time that it comes out officially, I've already got traction for it.
And you're going to be mainly focusing on the Kindle version of the book, is that correct?
No, I will have the Kindle version as well, but really for my goal and for my business, it makes much more of an impact when I have people with the hard copy of the book. So what I'm trying to cultivate is people who are going to buy 10 or more copies. They're going to have them shipped to one work location, and they're going to hand them out to their team. Or their individuals can also order them and have them come to them. But for me, there's something very tangible about the book. There's an opportunity for people really to see the connection between not only the book, but how they employ their leadership strategy. And for me and my business goals, the more people I have the physical book in their hands, the more opportunities I get invited to speak.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, especially with having the paperback or the hardback version. It's just such a more powerful thing to people to have that book in their hands, so to speak, because as I mentioned many times in the show, having your own paperback book or hardcover, it is basically the modern day business card. It's so much more powerful than just having the business card.
Absolutely, without a doubt.
Well, let's talk about your favorite book. So what is your favorite book, and what was the number one thing that you learned from it?
There are so many favorite books. It's really hard to pick one, but currently my current favorite is The Go-Giver by Bob Burg and John David Mann. And the reason being is that, first of all, it's written in parable format, so it's very similar to my books, and I like that. That's easy to read. I call them junk food books for the mind. They're also airplane books. You can read them on an airplane ride. But the concept in the book is really, to me, core to what I do and how I operate, and that is when you try to help others, you end up helping yourself. So the belief is, if you need something, make sure you're giving to the universe as much as you can, and your fellow colleagues, coworkers, friends, family, because all those things will come back to help you. You just have to make sure that you're focused on others, not only on what you want to achieve.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you. We actually had another guest on recently. She was also talking about the Go-Giver, and you're absolutely right. That's my philosophy too. I'm a really big believer in karma, and when you do good, when you give freely, it comes back 10 times. And my philosophy with that too is if you do wrong, then it comes back 100 times.
Exactly. I agree without a doubt.
Well, for a final question, what is your favorite quote and why?
Well, this may sound a little narcissistic because it's my own quote, but it's been one that I don't even remember when I developed, but it's been with me my entire career. And it's that no one's sense of urgency ever matches my own. And there's two folds to that. One is that sometimes people want things from me faster than I want to give them to them. It doesn't have that same level of urgency. And on the flip side, I may need things from people that they don't see the same level of urgency. So my goal is always to realize that we're often coming from different points of urgency. And the key is that if we really need something, we have to communicate to make it happen. So if I don't find something as urgent, but the person who needs it from me says, I have to tell you, this is what I need it by this date, it's really important, that will help me to change my focus, and I'll be very open to it. On the flip side, I like to do the same for other people and say, you know what, this is not a fire issue, this is not the house is burning down, but it is important to me that I have it by whatever date. And the more we communicate effectively with each other, especially on timelines and levels of importance, the greater our communication and the more we can help each other in the long term.
Yeah, I think that's a great philosophy with that. Well, I want to thank you for being a guest on the show. What is the best way for people to find you online?
Perfect. I have two ways. One is I have two different websites. I have shockyourpotential.com and shockyourpotentialpodcast.com. So just like you, I have a podcast where I interview people who are focused on excellence in leadership, sales, and the customer experience. So shockyourpotential.com, shockyourpotentialpodcast.com, and that's the best way to find me easily.
Well, Michael, I want to thank you again for being a guest on the show, and I wish you all the best in your author journey ahead.
Thank you very much, Paul. I appreciate being on your show.
Thanks again for joining us today. To learn more about how to get your book published with a proven system that works, grab a free copy of my book at getpublishedpodcast.com.